everybody. Thanks for joining me here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and welcome to Nature's Detail Revealed with Topaz Detail 3. With the latest detail enhancement technology that we've added into Topaz Detail 3, including the different advanced technology of the actual small, medium, and large detail sliders, along with the boost technology, but even more so with the different highlight and shadow detail that we've incorporated into the program as well. It is a great program for nature photography at this point. It is also very quick and easy to use with your presets over on the left, or just a quick slider bumping up of a couple of different sliders. So we're going to be going over several different workflows, some more advanced, some very quick, and we're going to be looking at several types of nature photography, including wide open landscapes like you see over here on the left, some of the forest landscapes here, and more macro type of imagery as well, where we'll be incorporating the brush out and mask feature that we've added into Topaz Detail 3. So that's really important as well, especially in your macro photography. And we're going to be talking about how to also enhance your tone and color very naturally with Detail 3. Detail is going to be a more natural type of enhancement than, let's say, Topaz Adjust, which can be a little bit more stylistic. So we're going to be talking about how to just naturally make these nature images really pop out without going too over the top. And then we will be going into a more stylized type of image like you see here with our butterfly. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. For the first image, I am going to be working in Photo Effects Lab as my host program. If you're unfamiliar with Photo Effects Lab, it is our standalone and plugin. You can use it as a plugin as well, but it is our host for our own plugins here at Topaz. If you want to learn more about it, you can definitely get on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/topazlabs and check out that intro to Photo Effects Lab. So this is the ending image. Let me show you the before image here. Here's before. And this image was taken off the coast of Normandy. It was not super detailed because I was very far away at the time. And the exposure isn't great. It's a little bit flat. So I wanted to take this into Topaz Detail 3 only and see what I could bring out of it. Instead of going through my normal workflow, which would usually, I'd go through the exposure and color settings, maybe in something like Topaz Adjust and really bring that out. But for those of you that might not have it and you're just interested in Detail 3, I wanted to see what I could do just with Detail 3. And I thought it came out really nicely and very natural in the end. Here was the after image. I did a quick little adjustment and crop within Photo Effects Lab as well, so that's why you saw that actual composition kind of move around there a little. But as far as the color, tone, exposure, and detail enhancements, you can do all of this within Detail 3. So this is going to be our first image we take in. So let's go ahead and actually get rid of this top layer, which is our after. I'm just going to drag it down to delete, and I'm going to start with this second layer that I've created. With this second layer, all I've done is done a quick rotation with my rotate tool, and then scaling and a little bit of a crop to get this exactly where I want it on this second layer, but there have been no detail or exposure tone enhancements at all made. So to get this into Detail 3, all I'm going to do is take this image and come over to Detail 3 and say Start Plugin, and it'll pop up my Detail 3 interface. I'm not going to be going into a overall introduction really into Detail 3 because we have already gone through that. Again, you can find those at youtube.com/topazlabs, but I will be going into some of the tools that we have added into Detail 3 that will help with your nature photography, and I'll just do a really quick overview for those of you who are new to the program. So let me press reset all over here on the right just to kind of get back to the default of nothing. Basically, this is set up where your preset panel is over here on the left. Your preset preview is up top. You have collections of presets that you can click on. So let's say I want to do my creative detail collection. And then you have the presets within that collection below. As you scroll over those, you'll see that your preset preview does change up top. And you can just click on it and see it applied to your image over on the right. So we have several different collections here. Creative Detail Collection, which isn't going to enhance any of the tone or color within your image, but specifically work on your detail. Then you have your Highlight Detail Collection, which is only going to work with your highlight detail and not your shadow detail. And then you have your Shadow Detail Collection, which again will just work with your shadow detail and not your highlight detail. So if you notice, as I do a before and after down here in the lower left where you have all of this shadow, I clicked on the Shadow Detail Strong. Here's before, here's after. It's only affecting that shadow detail. And this is one of the great things about this new version of Topaz Detail 3 that's great for your nature photography, because it can open up these shadowy areas and bring detail to where it kind of looked flat, like this particular image. So we're going to be going over that. Then we have a Smooth Collection. It's going to be actually taking detail out of your image, and then a Stylized Detail Collection. This is going to be affecting your color, tone, and detail all together. So here's before, here's after. There's several really great presets that you can just click on to see how it'll affect your image and then move on from there. Down at the bottom you have the ability to save, delete, import, or export your presets. The menu is going to allow you to enter your key and actually choose different type of preferences. You have your before and after image, or before and after tabs up here on the upper left. If you just want to click those, you can also toggle back and forth like I've been doing with my space bar. You can also do it with your left mouse button. If you want to see the before and after at the same time, you can come over to the top right and you have the split screen view. Just click on that and you'll see your before on the left and your after on the right. If you want to get back, just click on the main screen view and there you are. We have our preview navigator up here on the upper right where you can actually just scroll in and scroll out, or zoom out, excuse me. You can press Fit to get the image into the window size that you have on your screen, or you can press 1:1, which will always take you to 100% so you can see exactly what's going on. I'm going to go back to Fit, and then in the below that you have your undo and redo buttons, your snap feature, which will allow you to take snapshots of your workflow as you're going along and save them so you can toggle back and forth. This allows you to kind of keep track of where you were at, let's say 5 steps before in your workflow, and if you get to a spot where you say, I really kind of like what I'm doing here, I want to save this but I don't necessarily want to quit playing, you can just save those settings and you'll be able to go back to them. Oh, this is kind of annoying. Sorry about that. All right, and then we have our adjustment panel below that, and this is where obviously all of the adjustments are and where all of the magic happens. We have our detail adjustments, which is going to have all of the breakdown of our detail, the tone adjustments, color, and then de-blur. For this particular workflow, we are going to be going over every single one of these panels, just so you can get an idea of the actual program and how you can work with it with these nature images. And then we are also going to be working with the effect mask as well, which if you click on that tab, you'll see your effect mask, the menu, and the overall opacity. We'll be going over that shortly. Down at the bottom right, we have Reset All. That will get you back to your default position of no effect whatsoever. The I Feel Lucky button, which will basically just take all of your adjustments and randomly move them around and until maybe you get something where you get lucky and it looks good. And then you have your Apply button. The Apply button allows you to apply the settings that you have in your adjustment panel to your image and then continue working. So you can, let's say, I want to apply detail that is completely different in my sky than my ocean and foreground. I can do that all within the same setting because I have this Apply button and the effect mask here. So that is a great tool to have, especially in your nature photography with your macro images where you might just want to affect the actual subject and not the really lovely blurred background. So we're going to be going over that as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the, let's see here, for this one, I actually do want to use the de-blur slider. We're going to be going into a little bit more advanced steps than just the introduction to the program, where I really don't talk about the deblur. But the deblur is a beautiful option for your nature photography, especially if you're going to be printing out your image and blowing it up to, let's say, even 11 by 14. That deblur is going to give you a really beautiful crispness to your image if it's not already really crisp. So let's go ahead and look at the image at 100% to start off with, and we're going to go to the area that's supposed to be in focus. As we come over to that area, you'll notice that it's not really all that detailed. So we're going to be working on that, trying to crisp that up before we even get into the detail options. The way that you can do that is this deblur. The deblur is something that is not going to work for some images, and on other images it's going to work beautifully. Basically what it is it will allow you to deblur your image up to 2 pixels. So at 0 it's not working at anything, and as you take this up to 1, that'll be 1 pixel and then 2 pixels. And usually 2 pixels, you'll definitely start to see a little bit of overshooting because not everything has that really strong edge, and that's what it's trying to detect and work with. So I'm going to come back down to about 0.75 and take my suppress artifacts up maybe to about 0.5. The suppress artifacts is going to allow you to suppress those overshooting artifacts that you saw just happen as I took my blur size all the way up to 2. So anytime you start to see that start to occur, you can keep your blur size the same, take your suppress artifacts up, and that might help as well. So it's kind of difficult to see on the webinar itself. I'm going to take this blur size up to about 1, so maybe it shows up a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so here's before. Notice up here at the top of the rock, it's not very in focus. There's no really edges going on. And here's after. You start to see the actual edges within the rock start to take place, and it just deblurs it enough to get it a little bit more crisp. So again, here's before. And here's after. This is something you'll have to play with on your own screen. I fear that the webinar system is not going to be showing this to you well enough, but I definitely use it quite a bit on nature photography, especially the wide open landscapes and the macro images. When it's kind of that in-between, I tend not to need it very much, but with these really wide open, big subjects or the very, very small, close subjects, it's a beautiful option. And you do want to use the deblur first, so that's why we're going to that first. You want to work with that before you even get into your detail, because deblur is even smaller than any of your detail sliders. When you open up your detail sliders, you'll see that you have 6 sliders broken down into 3 different sizes of detail. You have your small detail, medium detail, and large detail, and each one has a boost slider. The boost is just going to determine the range of small details, if it's going to be a lot of small details that are going to be affected and only a small portion of small details. Same thing with the boost for the medium, or the same thing for the boost for the large. You also now within detail 3 have not only the overall, which detail 2 had, these 6 sliders, but now you also have shadow detail and highlight detail. For your nature photography, it is going to be a great, great tool, especially with that shadow detail. Let's start with our overall detail. I'm going to go to about 50% to look at this at a more natural view instead of the 100%. And I'm just going to make sure that the area that I want to work with the detail is actually in my frame. And we're just going to start moving these sliders up so I can tell you kind of exactly which areas it's going to affect. So if you have a nature photograph that has a lot of texture, such as this one, where maybe that you want to really enhance that texture and bring it out, the small detail slider is going to be a beautiful option. So as you take this up, that texture of the rocks within this, of the ocean, of the waves, of the breaking of the waves just starts to be really enhanced. Here's before, and here's after. So you'll notice it's not affecting any other type of detail, not the medium or large detail, but just the very smallest texture. I'm going to take this up even further so you really start to see it. And really notice how it works on this rock. It can be quite beautiful in certain areas, and then in some it starts to go a little bit too far. But that's why we have this effect mask within detail, and you can be very selective of where you put each type of detail. So here's before, here's after. I'm going to go ahead and take this down just a bit. This is pretty high at 0.75. I'm going to take that down to about 0.25. And move on to the medium detail. The medium detail is going to be working on not the structure detail, which is the large detail, and not the texture detail, which is the small detail, but the in-between areas. So you'll notice that it does increase the edge contrast just a little bit between those smaller structures within your image. But it's working on more of these medium-sized details instead of the very, very small. Here's before, here's after. I'm going to take that down as well. Take it down to about 0.15. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. And then the large detail. The large detail is going to work on these larger structure type details. A lot of these heavier edges you'll start to see will start to stand out quite a bit without giving you any sort of halo or any sort of artifacts. And that's what makes detail so special. You can really push it quite a bit without seeing any sort of artifacts or halos start to appear. So I'm going to take this up quite a bit. You'll see those larger details really start to stand out. Take that down because it's kind of crazy. All right, so after I've gone through the small, medium, and large detail in my overall detail area, here's before, and here's after. Here's before again, and here's after. At 50%, this is starting to look very nice and crisp, and that detail and the texture is just coming out so much nicer than it was before. Within my shadow detail now, you can see down here, especially in the lower left, let's go down here a little bit more. And these lower rocks, it still looks kind of flat in these areas, and I don't have a lot of that detail coming through. And that's just something that's natural for your shadow areas because there's not a lot of light getting in there. It's not going to be pulling out those that shadow detail. However, in Detail 3, you have the ability just to do that pretty quickly here by clicking on your shadows and working with your shadow detail specifically. I like to really work with my medium detail when it comes to my shadow detail because it'll bring out both kind of the smaller and larger areas because it's right in between. So I'm going to take this up. Actually, I'll take it up and down so you can see that it is only affecting the shadow areas. So keep your eye on the shadows, all the rocks. It's all the way down, going up again. So you can really bring out some of that extra texture that might not be there when working with the overall. So take a little bit of that going up. There we are. And same thing with the highlights. So if I want to work with maybe coming up to my ocean and sky and see what's happening, here's before, here's after, again before and after. If I want to really bring out some of these wave texture, I can go over to my highlights, take maybe my medium detail, see what happens. Oh yeah, wave really starts to pop out. I'll take that small detail up just a little. Here's before, here's after. The clouds really start to pop out. And that texture of the water really starts to pop out when you work with the highlights. So that is how the detail section works within Detail 3. It's just going to give you a lot more advanced technology than Detail 2, a lot more options, and that's a really great thing when it comes to the nature photography. So once I'm done with my detail, I'm going to go back to fit so I can see my overall image. And I'm not going to pay attention really to how my detail looks when I go back to fit because I can't actually tell what my detail is doing unless I'm at 50% or 100%. So don't worry about if your detail starts to look a little too sharp if you zoom out to 20% or 25% because it's just the preview is too small within the actual program. But I do like to go to fit when I come down to my tone and my color so I can see on an overall scale what it's doing. Now Detail is going to allow you to do some unique type of tone control in this tone tab. First off, we do incorporate IntelliColor technology. IntelliColor technology is going to allow you to change your exposure and your contrast without actually changing your saturation. So that's something that's unique to this program. And then we also have these tone modules that allow you to change the luminosity of certain color regions within your image without actually changing other color regions. So it's very specific, but it's all very natural, and that's a great thing for nature photography. That's something that a lot of nature photographers and I myself hold pretty dear. I don't want to necessarily change the color completely of what I was doing unless I'm going for a more stylistic type of image. If I want a more realistic, natural image that just has a pop to it and just has a little bit of a boost, this is a great program to use, and this tone module is going to be really helpful for you. So the exposure, as you take it down or up, you'll notice that that saturation doesn't change. The RGB scale stays the same, and that is something that's unique to this program and is going to be great for these more natural type of adjustments. So I'm going to take that exposure down, and as I take the exposure down, I'm bringing in some more detail into my clouds, which were a little too bright. The highlights were clipping a little bit, so I've brought that back in very quickly, very easily. Here's before, here's after. I have that detail in that front cloud and everything, so that's great. And now I can come down to my contrast and my advanced contrast sliders. The contrast will, again, allow you to change your contrast without actually changing the saturation, which is unique as well. I'm going to leave my contrast the same because I'm pretty happy with my highlights right now. I needed to bring some actual tone back into my highlights, but I do want to darken up my shadows a little bit. So I'm going to come down to my shadows and blacks and take those down just a little. So I got a little bit more contrast down here in the rocks, and that's kind of nice. Here's before, here's after. So I'm pretty happy there. And now we've come down to these color tone modules that I was telling you about. So the cyan red slider, as you take it to the left, your cyan is going to get brighter, your red's going to get darker. And as you take it to the right, your cyan's going to get darker, your red's going to get brighter. But again, it does it in a very natural way that still allows you to have a natural looking type of landscape. So I want to take my cyans and let's go down with them, or take them darker. So my sky is going to get a bit darker. I'm going to come down to my yellow blue and take it to the left, which will take my blues darker and my yellows lighter. That's nice. Really starts to make these light areas within the water stand out. And then I'm going to just play with my magenta green and see what it does. That's what I love to do with these three sliders, is just to move them around and see what they kind of do. And I like it going a little bit to the right, which is actually increasing the luminosity, taking the luminosity brighter of my greens. So you'll see that these green type of lightness within the water starts to really stand out, and the magenta blue areas are continuing to get darker. But it still does it in a pretty natural way. Here's before and here's after. That's actually a little dark for me, so I'm going to come up to my exposure and take that up. Here's before, here's after. Pretty happy there. And now I'm going to come down to my color. My color is going to have some basic temperature and tint controls in it for white balance, and then it's going to have your saturation and saturation boost. The saturation is going to also have that IntelliColor technology, which will allow you to increase the saturation of your image and still keep it natural without, you know, starting to add in these color artifacts in your areas and your whites or anything like that. So this is something that is really a great saturation slider for your nature type of images that you're trying to keep more natural, like I'm trying to do with this particular image. The saturation boost, on the other hand, is going to boost up the less saturated colors within your image to try to give you a little bit more color balance. But you have to be a little bit careful with it because it's a pretty extreme slider. As you take it up, especially in your whites, you'll start to notice that because whites are not too saturated, it will try to boost up that saturation, and you will start to get a little bit of artifacts, color artifacts showing up in those white areas. But it does amazing things if you're wanting to go a little bit more with your color and really boost it up. I'm going to take my saturation, oh, I did not mean to do that. My saturation boost back down to 0, leave my saturation up. And I'm pretty happy. Here's before, here's after. If I was, doing this on my own, that maybe would take me just a couple minutes to go through, and that's doing everything manually. The great thing is you can save these this as a preset and see if this works for the next image you bring in, if you really like this type of setting. So then it will be even quicker. So it's a very quick enhancement to either end your workflow with, or actually, like we did here, change basically everything about it, your exposure, your tone, color, as well as the very enhanced detail control that you have within this detail module. So again, here's before and after. Let's go ahead and say OK and go into the next image. The next few images we're going to go very quickly through so you can kind of see how the workflow would be for each one. I'm going to start off with a macro image. Okay, let me show you this one more time. Here's before and after. Okay, so for the next workflow, we're going to hop on into Photoshop CS5 as the host. And let's go to this dandelion image. Let's get rid of this top layer. And here's before. This is just a very quick enhancement just to show you how quickly you can go in, change it, and get out of there. Here's after. The detail has been definitely enhanced, which is beautiful on this macro type of image. And the sky has changed color just a bit, just gone a bit darker. So let's take this original image in, and I'll show you how to do that. The color or tone modules, the cyan, red, and the blue, yellow, are going to be great for images that you have skies in, because it allows you to change the luminosity and make that darker without actually changing the color of the sky. So that's a really great tool to have for nature photography. I'm going to go ahead and just hop on into Detail 3. And for this image, it's a great, nice image to start off with. Didn't need to do much to it, but as you look at it at 100%, oops, that already has some detail. Let's go reset all. You'll notice that it's not completely detailed in the areas where I want it to be. I just wanted to enhance it just a little bit, not much. I thought it looked pretty good. I was pretty happy with it, but I didn't want to change the color. To do this quickly within Detail 3, just go to your Creative Detail collection. If you like the color of your macro image, you want to keep something very, very natural looking without really getting a stylized type of look with these saturation or color sliders or anything like that, go to your Creative Detail collection, and these overall details, light, medium, and strong, are just basic enhancements of different strengths of detail. So this is overall detail light, overall detail medium, and then we get really strong detail, which you'll notice starts to affect the back and smooth areas. Here's before, here's after. I really like this medium 1, I think. Here's before, here's after. I think it really makes the detail within the focus point here, or focal point, just really beautiful. Here's before, here's after. Let's take a look at this at about 50% so we can really see what's happening. Again, before and after. Now, one thing you might start to notice, especially in your macro photography, is in your blurry areas, if you've increased the detail to a point where it's really starting to be noticeable in your background like it is here, you can counteract that or take that away very quickly with an actual slider without actually having to brush it away through the effect mask. Sometimes you do have to do that. It's a better option, but many times you can just come into your detail slider, come into your boost sliders and play with those and reduce those artifacting that you might see in the background. So you can see a little detail coming through here. All I'm going to do is take my boost small detail and take that down. And I'm going to take my medium detail down just a little and my medium boost down just a little. So right away all of that has flattened out. And you might say, well, wait a minute, didn't I just take all of that detail down? No, I didn't. Here's before. Here's after. You still have the strong enhancement of detail without the worry of adding any sort of artifacting or any sort of change to your sky in the background. The reason for this is, a lot of people I see are asking, what does boost really mean? Basically what it does is it changes the range of details within the small detail range or medium detail range or large detail range that are going to be affected. So if I take my boost slider up, more and more small details are going to be affected. So you'll notice you'll start to see a grain-like, noise-like thing in the background of the sky because it's looking at those pixels and it's determining that they're noise. So as you take that boost slider up, even though we haven't changed our small detail number or amount, the actual amount of small details are going to be affected. It has changed. As you take this down, less and less and less and less of those small details are going to be affected, and you see that starts to smooth out. However, they are still affected because your small detail has been moved up a little bit. I'm going to take that boost back to 0 and just take it down a little. And it's as quick as that to change the detail and not affect the background in this macro image. Now if I want to take my sky and make it just a little bit darker, I can quickly come down to my tone. I can come to my yellow-blue slider, take my blue or take it to the left, which will make my blues darker. My yellow is a little bit lighter. I can take my cyan red to the right, which is going to make my reds lighter, my cyans a bit darker. Here's before, here's after. And that is how quickly you can change and really make your detail and tone pop out in these images. Here's before and after. Let me go ahead and I had a couple people ask me right away about this particular image, so we can show you quickly the before and after and how easy it was to do this as well. Here's before and after. Now this is a little bit more stylized. It definitely has changed the feeling of the overall image quite a bit. This is a much softer, foggy, soft feeling to it, and here we've definitely enhanced the color and made it pop and really cut through the fog using the detail sliders. You can notice here you see less and less detail through that fog, and by enhancing those detail sliders we can see much more detail through it, and we just kind of cut through all that fog. Now I also did something a little bit extra because I can't help myself. I love adjust. So what I did first was take it into adjust, and this is the adjust copy. I just did a quick autumn preset. So we'll go through this workflow really quickly, and I'll show you how I worked with this one. The great thing about those tone sliders within, not only the detail sliders, but also the tone sliders within Detail 3 is it allows you to change the brightness and that luminosity of the tones and really change the way your image feels, but you still have a natural feeling to it. So although this did go a little bit more stylized, it still wasn't over the top. So this is adjust. I'm just popping in here really quickly. My Vibrant Collection, one of my favorite presets is Autumn. So here's before, here's after. Just really warms everything up. It really brings out those reds of the leaves. It was a little bit strong though. I didn't want to, again, go too over the top with it, so I went into my finishing touches, came down to my transparency, and just took my transparency to about, I think it was about 0.4. Here's before, here's after. So it took away quite a bit of, made that preset pretty opaque so you could see through it quite a bit. And I also made sure to go into my global adjustments and turn my details off. This is important if you have a certain workflow where you go into other programs that you are that you have details within them. If you know that you're going to be going into Detail 3, Topaz Detail, I would just shut off the details within Adjust if you're going to be in there, or any other program. Just wait till you get to Detail 3 to work with your creative detail, and don't worry about it in another program, because you're going to have so much more control over the detail size and the detail enhancement within Detail 3. So that is something that I suggest if you do use Adjust, which I do, and I know that I'm going to go into Detail 3, so I'm just going to turn it off, and I'm going to say OK. And now hop on into Detail, which will allow me a lot more control. So now I've just warmed up the image a little bit within Adjust using that Autumn preset, and now coming in here, I can come down to Reset All and play around here just a little bit. Now, I'm not sure if I actually went into a preset to get my enhancement there, but it really, you can just come in and you can start playing around and see what happens within these presets. But I'm going to go over here to the right, I'm going to say Reset All, and just work with this separately. I'll go up to about 50% and just keep an eye on the details as I work with them. Take my small details up a little bit, not too much. I don't want to bring out too much texture. I want to bring out more of this medium and structured detail coming in through these leaves and trees. So I'm just taking these up really quickly, and right away you start to see a lot of that structured detail. The leaves start to stand out and just start to pop. It really is beautiful in this. If I want to go a little bit further, I can use those boosts or take it up a little bit further, but I don't really want to actually. So let's see here with my shadows, or actually I'm going to go into my highlights and work with my medium detail a little bit more. My large detail. And you'll see as I work with my highlights, the fog just starts to be affected quite a bit, and you can really bring it, just cut through to the trees beyond in the fog with this large detail and the medium detail sliders. So that's how we worked with that. Here's before, here's after. I'm going to go back down to my fit and just come into my tone and work with the luminosity of this red just to kind of see if I can make it a little bit brighter. The way I did that was take this to the right, cyan red, magenta to the left, yellow to the left, really starting to brighten up those leaves. But as I did that, I noticed it really started to brighten up my ground, and I lost some of this contrast within there. I didn't like that. I wanted to bring the contrast back, so very quickly you can just come up to your contrast slider, bring some of that contrast back, and still have the really bright leaves. Here's before, here's after, again before and after. So that is the workflow for that particular image. And the last image I'd like to work on, I'd like to go over the effect mask and how easy it is to paint out some of the effects that you might not want in a nature type shot or a macro shot. Because again, you can start to get some of those artifacts when you're working with those small details. Even the medium details in certain types of backgrounds, it'll start to not be a very nice effect on there. So we're going to go through that process right now. Here's before and after. All right, this is a butterfly image and bee image up here that is not super in focus in the beginning. Here's the original image. This is a crop of an image, so you can see that the detail is not amazing, so we're going to really enhance that with Topaz Detail. And it's also a little bit washed out. The exposure is not great. Now with this type of image and this type of feeling, I either like to go a little bit more stylistic, or I try to correct it completely and, you know, bring back the color and the correct type of contrast and exposure. I decided to go a little bit more stylistic with this particular image, just because that's the way I felt when I looked at it. And what I did is I ended up taking it into Topaz Adjust first and apply a preset, and then took that transparency down just a little to get this image. Now I'll go over that with you, but I wanted to show you that this is what I started off with in Topaz Adjust. And then I went into Topaz Detail to really pop out some of that color, some of that detail, and really have the butterfly and bee start to stand out. So I think we succeeded here. Let me go over this workflow with you really quickly, and you'll see that when we go into Topaz Detail 3, the background just looks horrible once we start working with the detail, and adjusting those sliders was not going to do it for me, so I had to use that effect mask. So let's go ahead and take this down, and I'll do my original background, do a copy. I'm just going to hop into Topaz Adjust somewhere. There we are. And I completely forget what I used. I think it was the film collection. Let's see here. It might have been one of the cross processes. No. Sorry, as I try to figure this out. Aha. Yes. It was the Lomo 3, which is one of my favorite presets in this film collection. Here's before. Here's after. This really just starts to give it a nice, it starts to really just play off of that washed out look and bring out the contrast, but also keep it nice and soft. You can see that it added quite a bit of grain, and that's because this particular preset adds grain. I don't want that grain. I want to get rid of it, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my finishing touches and uncheck grain, and it automatically just starts to smooth my background right back up. Here's before, here's after. But it was still a little bit strong for me, so what I'm going to do is again open up my transparency and just take that up, take out some of that effect. About right there. Here's before, here's after. So once I'm happy with that, I just said okay. And then I went into, well, I screwed up. Let me go right back in. I forgot to turn my details off. So as I go back into Topaz Adjust, I can just go to my last use settings. Last use settings will apply what I just had with my transparency and all. So now I'm going to go up to my global adjustments and turn my details off. So it takes away any sort of detail enhancement, and now I'm going to say okay again. All right, now we're going to make another background copy or another copy of that and hop on into Detail 3. Ooh, that's a lot of detail for that guy. Let me go to Reset All. We'll get out of there. And I'm going to go to my Creative Detail collection and see if I can just start off with maybe a medium detail. And make sure to go to 100% or even 50%. There we are. So here's where we start off. Here's before. Here's after, and this was the medium detail 2. Let's take that down just a notch. Here's before, here's after. Now with this particular preset, I'm actually going to go back to Reset All and just do this really quickly in the manually. Sometimes I just like to do it. I feel like I have more control. If I come into my detail, especially with this macro type of imagery, I actually come into my detail module and just do it myself. So I'm just going to take my small detail up to where I really start to see some detail enhancement within my wings, within the flowers. Here's before, here's after. Take my medium detail up. Here's before, here's after, and now my large detail. Here's before, here's after. You can see the wings start to actually become apparent on our bee. The hair as well starts to stand out. The hair on the butterfly's body starts to actually become apparent. everything just starts to be much more crisp. Now don't pay attention to the background within here because it's already starting to look pretty blotchy and ugly. The reason is because this background is not as smooth as that blue sky was. So it's looking at all of these different colors and it's saying, oh, well, you're a detail. I'm going to start enhancing you. I'm going to start enhancing you. Well, it doesn't look very good. So instead of playing with the boost sliders like we did with the other one, we're actually going to go ahead and paint it out. But before we do that, I'd like to go into my shadow detail and take my small detail up just a little, as well as my medium detail, just to really bring out all of that hair and as much detail as possible. Here's before, here's after. So you can really extract a lot of that detail and be very exact in the areas that you want to bring it from. Let's see here. Now before we go into the tone and color, because I would like to adjust the tone and color of my background as well, what I'm going to do, now that I'm happy with my detail, is come into my effect mask. I'm going to go back to fit so we see the entire thing. Here's before, here's after. It's a bit strong, but we're going with it. With the effect mask, you can actually paint in or out the effect. So it's just like a mask tool within Photo Effects Lab or Photoshop. It's your basic mask type of technology. What makes this so special is the edge-aware technology. It will actually determine edges by color, so you can quickly just paint out the areas you want, make sure that your brush stays on the right color, and it won't affect anything else that it touches as long as the crosshairs of the brush stay on the color you want to affect. So I'm going to keep the strength at 0, which is black. We have a white mask, as you see up here at the top. My brush size, as you take that up and down, you'll see that move, so you can just determine the correct brush size for you as you go. I'm going to take mine pretty high so you can really see how it works as my brush goes into the different colors and it still won't affect it. Now I'm going to take my hardness down quite a bit. I'll take my flow all the way up. That means that the flow is going to determine how quickly that strength value is put through my brush. So if the flow is all the way at 1, it's going to be immediately that black value. If the flow is down at 0.5, then it's going to take me several strokes to get to the black value that I want. So I'm just going to go directly to 1 and we'll just stick with that. And then I'm going to take my edge-aware all the way up. If my edge-aware is at 0, then my brush is just a normal brush. It doesn't have any edge-aware technology. If it is at 1 and you start painting, as long as you keep the crosshairs of the brush on the color, again, that you want to affect, it's not going to affect the other colors around it. So, as you can see, with that butterfly wing, it didn't affect that, and you can see all the flowers coming through. So I'm going to come to the other side now, work with that. I'm doing this pretty quickly. I would take my time a little bit more if I had time, but we're running out, so I want to make sure I can answer your questions that are coming through. But I just wanted to show you how to do this. There we are. All right, so we have this mask now, and you can see here's before, here's after. The background is now not being affected in a negative way. And you're still getting, here's before, here's after, a lot of detail coming through now on the plant and the butterfly. Now, let's see here. To then go back and be able to change the tone and color of the entire image, not just the area that is being affected right now, what I'm going to have to do is apply my adjustments. So if I know that I'm happy with my detail adjustments, which I'm going to go ahead and say yes I am, I'm going to come down to this bottom area and just say apply. Once it applies, this is my new base image. I'm going to reset my mask, and now if I go to my before over here on the upper left, you'll see that my before image is the detailed image. So now I can come back into my adjustments, press reset all, go into my tone, and color and work with that. So here I'm going to come down to my luminosity adjustments and just play with those and try to really make my butterfly and bee stand out as well as my flowers. There we go. The yellow and orange of the wings are really starting to pop now. Here's before and after. And now I just want to add a little bit of saturation to the overall image and saturation boost as well. So here's before, here's after, quickly adding in some luminosity adjustments and color adjustments, say okay, and much more stylized type of image for this macro of this butterfly and bee, which was not very detailed or stylized in the beginning, and now it is. And that's a little strong of an effect for me personally. I would take that down just a little, but you get the idea. It's very quick, and you can really get some really cool effects with these nature photographs. Now I'm going to answer some of these questions that are coming through. Let me check it out. If you have any more questions, you can type them in. I will stick around for about 10 minutes afterwards as well and answer more questions because we do have several, and I did run over my presentation time. Sorry about that, but I do really enjoy this program. It's one of my very favorites, so I hope that you saw the usefulness and benefit of Detail 3 for your nature photographs. Let's take a look at some of these questions. Let's see here. Tom says, after using Detail 3, would you ever need to use In Focus? Tom, I never use In Focus at the end of my workflow. I usually use it at the beginning of my workflow as a capture sharpener. So similar to the de-blur technology within Topaz Detail 3, it is something that you would use at the beginning. So we use it at the beginning of our Topaz Detail 3 workflow for that de-blur technology, but it's kind of the same idea that it works on just the very, very smallest details within your image, so you want to use it as early on as possible within your workflow and then work with your creative detail enhancements afterwards. So my workflow as far as Topaz goes is In Focus, and then denoise if I need it. If I have really, really heavy noise, if I have really high ISO noise, then I'll do denoise first and then In Focus, and then I'll move on through all of my actual adjust or black and white effects, simplify, whatever type of effect or look I'm trying to go with. I move on towards that. And then if I'm looking for a more natural type of adjustment like I was today, Detail 3 is one of my favorites because you really get to play with it a lot without making it so stylized. I had a couple other people ask, what is the difference in the detail, or how are the sizes determined? And the answer for Detail 3 is different from Detail 2. In Detail 2, it was a set standard size of pixels, but within Detail 3, the technology has changed, and it is determined by the size of your image. So detail sizes are not set pixel sizes anymore, or pixel ranges. It actually correlates to the size of your image. So one way to really see how the sizes are different within your particular image that you're working in, if you want to really have a grasp on that knowledge for an image that you have, you can go into Topaz Detail and take down all of your size sliders. So I kind of like this, this trick. I'm going to go to Reset All. I'm going to take my small, medium, large detail sliders down, and now I have a very flat image because I've taken all of my detail down to the lowest area. Now if I just take my small detail up, you'll notice that it only brings back that really texture-like type of detail within the image. Nothing else. So it still looks very flat and not very very flat in the other areas of your image. So let's take that down. Now if I just take my medium detail up, you'll notice that it's more, again, of that medium size elements. It's not the very small texture, but it's not these big structure type details within your image. So you do start to see a lot of detail still, but that texture has been removed. I'm going to take that down, and then with the large detail, you'll see it's these really large areas of contrast, those large structure type of areas where it's actually enhancing. So when you enhance all three of them, here's the small, or enhance it just a little, medium, and large, you get to control it on all three of those levels. Here's before, here's after, with these sliders. And again, the boosts are going to determine the range of small details. So I had several people ask too how the boost really works. So let's do this. I'll take everything down. I'm going to take my small detail up to, let's say, about 0.5. And you'll notice that some of the small detail has come back, but not a lot of it. A lot of the texture isn't there. That's because my boost is at 0. As I take my boost up, more and more of those small details are going to be affected by this small detail value. And that's really how that boost works. It doesn't necessarily make the effect stronger, it just affects more of the details. So it kind of gives the illusion that the small details are being affected in a stronger way. Same idea with your medium details and your large details. So here are the medium details up very high, but you're not seeing a lot of that change. As you take that boost up, more and more of them are affected. So I hope that gives you an idea of how the technology is really working behind the detail module, and gives you an idea of what size details are going to be affected by these sliders. Let's see here. Eric says the watercolor looked great with saturation boost. Can you then mask out the sky to keep that detail? Absolutely. And I think I did that actually before. So within, let's take this particular layer back into detail 3. Because we worked with the saturation, but we took the saturation boost, so we didn't have to deal with the sky issue. But in the example I showed you at the very beginning, I believe I did take that saturation boost up for the foreground and then just painted out the, or used the mask effect and got rid of the sky areas. So let me reset all just to make sure. Go down to my saturation boost, take that up. Really starts to bring out some beautiful color within the green of this water, and actually really does a lot of nice things within the tan and the yellows of my rocks, giving a little bit of extra boost as well. But then notice the clipping, major clipping going on in the middle of my clouds, and then all of the color artifacts that start to appear. It starts to try to add in all this saturation in these clouds that's not there, so it's just giving it a weird effect. The way that you can get rid of that is a couple of different ways. You can do the effect mask and just get rid of the whole sky, or you can use this edge aware and just get rid of the clouds itself, and that's what I did before, taking the edge aware all the way up, the brush size kind of up, hardness down, flow all the way up, my strength is at 0, and then I can just paint the clouds themselves. It's not going to paint the blue sky, so I get to keep the saturation boost that's happening for my actual color of the sky. So I can quickly just come in and go through all these clouds, get that more warm cloud back instead of the awkward purple crazy looking cloud that was created with that saturation boost. And again, this is really quickly, but here we are. Very quick before and after. So I've changed my foreground, kept my clouds at a good level. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me here today. Keep a lookout for your follow-up email within about an hour. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.